1, 5, 7, 12.
I wonder how many people notice that I do that.
Yeah.
Like I've been doing it ever since I first started doing podcasts online. I don't know.
Right.
When I started, I just thought it was hypnotic to do the opposite. So I do it every time. And I've never heard anybody comment on it, but I have to imagine some people notice.
What I want to do now, since we're talking about it, is I want to go back and learn the Rhythm Nation countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2 from Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation
Yeah.
thing, because it's gorgeous. And
I
so
don't
when
know
you're
that
counting,
It made the thing that popped into my head related to media and movies was do you remember the Sesame Street 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12?
Yeah.
Totally freaking random. You know what I found out recently, one of my heroes, I'm obsessively man crushy on Adam Savage from Mythbusters.
Sure. Yeah.
So I found out Adam Savage's dad was an animator. He made that animation for Sesame Street, the 1 2 3 4, and like I think there was a couple of other ones that I recognized when, and he would do them alone, like by himself. He hand animate the whole thing, and he would do like 1 or 2 a year, and he did 12 of them. So I think he worked for Sesame Street for like 6 years. And I remember those animations vividly.
Yes. No, so good. I think what's funny, recognizing what things I feel like talking about in our show today, and recognizing that, like, I think just a couple weeks ago, the big to-do for a minute was the different colors of Big Bird, and such that people were freaking out, and Big Bird had to post on Twitter to let people know that he has many cousins around the world, and that here's my cousin so-and-so, because everybody's like, that's not Big Bird! Big Bird! No! And that was the most important freaking out thing that people were up to, because apparently they just didn't have stuff to freak out about. Oh my Lord.
Harry Styles in a dress. I remember that was an outrage a few weeks back, and I'm just like, people, what?
I think people's nervous systems are just sort of like trained at this point. Like every week we have to be freaking about something.
Yeah. Well, it's also just social media is like, how many people are really freaking out about it? Is there what you don't know that there's not only 3 people in the world that are and everybody else is like, this is a non-issue, non-story, but there's only 3 really loud people that are outraged by it.
What was the old BuzzFeed phrase? Do you remember? You may be surprised that, or whatever that used to. I don't know. This so many years ago.
Yeah, like you'll never believe who.
Something may shock you, or something like that. What you don't know might shock you.
Yeah, 17 different things that you need to know, or you'll die. Number 11 will blow your mind.
Oh my God! So, hey everybody, welcome to the Enlightened Couch Potato Show. I am one of thy hosts, Adrianne Gunn.
And people do call me Nicholas Rave.
Nice. People do. I've heard it happen. To timestamp our episode today, this is episode 40.
40. That's kind of like an anniversary of sorts.
It feels pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So, just in case you want to place this in time, Rush Limbaugh died today.
What?
Oh, you didn't know?
Did he really? Oh, sorry. Am I not supposed to look that happy?
I giggled at lots of trauma, hardship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a Rush Limbaugh story.
Oh.
You want to hear? It's connected to the time I laughed the hardest in my life.
Oh, shit. Okay.
How's that for an opener?
I am ready.
Okay. So I went to school. I went to summer camp at an arts academy called Interlochen when I was 17 years old in Michigan. It was a big deal. I met lots of cool people, like tons of people way more talented than me. I got a scholarship to go there because I couldn't afford it. It's very expensive. Nice. And I was in the musical theater department, and in the cabin you ever do summer camp?
Kind of.
Summer camp, going away to summer camp is like, it's like high school on steroids. And remember, I was homeschooled, so I didn't do this. Was like, I don't know, a lot of high school condensed into like 6 weeks or 8 weeks or however long I was gone. And I had a lot of really horrible experiences. Overall, I'm glad I went. And the cabin life was one of those weird things. It's like I didn't know how to hang around with boys my own age, and I was very awkward and weird, and I got picked on and made fun of and bullied, and I made a few friends. One of the friends that I made was a cabin mate. His name was Stephen Limbaugh.
Oh, okay.
And Stephen was, probably still is, a really tall, gangly, skinny dude, kind of a Jim Carrey like physiology, just like all over the place, and so funny. Like, he was just wild and crazy and hilarious and really talented composer and musician.
Yeah.
He was Rush Limbaugh's cousin, turns out.
Okay.
And I asked him about it, and he was like, yeah, we know Rush, and like I think he'd flown on his plane or something. We didn't talk about politics. I didn't know about anything like that at the time. However, one night when we were walking home, they'd played the bugles, and we had to go back to our cabins. We were all giggling and laughing about something, like all my cabin mates, and at some point Steven took off running like full tilt. Just he's standing right next to us, and we're all like, whoa, what the hell? He's like running as fast as he can, runs probably 30 feet in front of us, and then jumps into the air and like straightens his entire body and slams his face into a stop sign. And I remember the stop sign went wobble, 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 wobble. He hit it that hard, and his feet flew out from underneath him, and he lands flat on his back. He did it on purpose. It was like the most epic pratfall you've ever seen in your life. And I gotta think he's done it before to know that if you hit your forehead into, later on he was like, that works with signs that have one pole. Yes. And then he's like, don't do it on the ones that have two poles. like he's tried, and he's like, that one hurt a lot. So he runs, he flies, he falls to the ground, and we can't breathe. We're all laughing so hard because it was just out of the blue, no preamble. You just had no idea what he was doing, and then you're like, what in the hell? So to just wrap up the story, probably 10, 11 years later, no, maybe more than that, I was in LA. I went to a concert. I don't go to a lot of music concerts. I've been to like a handful, like one hand probably in my whole life. So I went to this music concert at kind of a big deal place, like Nirvana played there. I don't remember what it was called. Might have been the Roxy. Yeah. So I think I was at the Roxy, and there was a lineup of like 4 bands, and I was there to see one of them. I don't remember one. And then
one of the 5 you've gone to. This is such a high priority in your life.
I know. Yeah.
5 shows you've ever been to, you don't.
I got invited, and I didn't know it. So the second band that went up, they were like, this new band has just gotten signed to a record deal. They're about to go on their first European tour. Give it up for, I don't remember the band name. And then they came up on stage, and their keyboard player was fucking Steven. And he's like, super tall. He looks exactly the same, super tall, playing like 3 different keyboards, rocked the house. And then afterwards I went up and said hi, and he said he remembered me. But I don't imagine very well because I was pretty forgettable and weird at that time. But that was my connection to Rush Limbaugh. And
I love it.
Don't let the door hit you on your way out, asshole.
Yeah, no, that's hilarious. I actually used to do pratfalls like that, things like that. I would frequently smash my head against the desk, or just suddenly go into a sprint and then slam against lockers and fall backwards. And in high school, I did that a lot. About 3 years ago, I was supervising a drum recital, an Indian drum recital, Indian from India, like
Yeah.
Southern India drum recital thing. There was this pretty famous freaking guru coming, and his band showed up. The sound engineer that we were utilizing for that gig, because I was supervising and not running sound, isn't always. Sometimes he rubs people the wrong way, and the amount of male humans who have opinions about how things should be and assert themselves increases when you're with a collectivist society that believes that everyone's opinion has value. So we've got a room full of everyone's decided that they're sound engineers, dudes, but there's also language barriers and people who are not necessarily great at communicating anyway. And it's my job to make sure shit goes on time, flows well, that the people paying for our facility and our humans' labor feel good about the thing. So there's this moment where people are like kind of arguing and kind of frustrated, and I'm attempting to make a point. And apparently an old strategy climbed up my spine and decided this is the time to mock hysteria for the sake of attention. And for some reason, I'm trying to talk to this band and shush people and get the thing. And so I'm like, are you kidding me? And I like leap up and then just plop like a freaking octopus on my back. There's some weird pratfall slam that I do. Just be like, I have had it, and blap. And boy, did everyone see that? And there's a sound and a plop, and I'm fine because my body was just like, I remember how to. And then for some reason, the drummer just decided that was apparently the sexiest thing that he'd ever seen. Now,
not what I was expecting.
No, not what I was expecting. I was just wanting to have like a break. What is our NLP thing?
A profoundly creative pattern interrupt.
Shit, yeah, pattern interrupt.
Yeah, you did a state break for everybody.
I did.
And somehow you hypnotized him so well.
Yes, that he was like, that is so sexy. I have to he just started kind of following me around with the googliest of eyes. And I was like, I thought, what?
I'm trying to I'm trying to think of the imprint period for someone who would find that sexy. Did he like have a crush on like a mime at some point, or like a clown performer?
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know.
I committed fully to the physicality of it. And I hadn't done a pratfall in at least 10 years when I done it. And I
get it. I think it's that's sexy. I was kind of into Steven when he did it. So
yeah. I haven't done God, like when you told the story, it's like, ooh, I kind of want to learn that because that'll be useful sometime. I mean, it totally worked. Pattern interrupt. Everybody was like, they forgot what they were talking about and arguing. I now had command because why? I had the most behavioral flexibility in the room. What is that? Law of requisite variety?
Law of requisite variety. You got to tell that part before you get to the crush part. The crush is like the bonus like twist, but you'd be like, it totally worked, and I interrupted their pattern. I took control of the situation. They were all in the palm of my hand. Also, it had a weird side effect.
I will use it.
Yeah.
I will use it. Oh my gosh. So, okay. Other things to timestamp, not related to entertainment, but well, no, it is. This one's actually related to entertainment. And also was The Rush. Some people need. I don't know if you can go into deeply healing state listening to his radio, but one could try. Fair enough. So how do I want to talk about this? Sometimes in life, I think, wouldn't it be nice? I think there's the meme. It'd be great if we could all have the confidence of a mediocre white man. I think that is the meme.
I wish I had that
world.
confidence too.
Yeah.
What?
Like sheer utter confidence of a mediocre white man. So a phenomenon happened recently where I'm like, well, maybe feminism is working, and now there are women who are also just exclaiming that they just feel like they can do just about fucking anything, and good job feminism. And maybe that will it'll cross over into the boardroom and like setting up boundaries and asking for raises and charging what you're worth and trying things that you might not think that you're 98% capable of. You're only 47%. Okay, so here's the thing. Gina Carano was apparently maybe fired from her gig. A lot
Seems pretty clear that she was.
I guess the language wasn't that we fired her. It was that she is not under contract for any.
It's true. Project. So I suppose they could have just said, we're not bringing that character back in the next season. So then they can say, we don't have any plans to work with her. And maybe she wasn't actually fired for that. But yeah.
So the theory is she's been voicing opinions on the Twitters and the social medias that people are not fond of. And a lot of people are calling and asking for her to be fired. And so maybe that's what happened. Who knows? What I find fascinating was the number of people I'm connected to in Facebook world, female-bodied people who have just decided that they could be the next Cara Dune. They've just announced, if you need a replacement, I'll do it. And so I'm like, well, that's fascinating. So I do a little Facebook stalkery there were about 3 or 4 different women who were just like, sign me up. None of whom have any, I've scanned for a while, any background in acting or martial arts or athleticism. They're not athletes, actors, and I'm thinking, this is amazing how our mirror neurons can be so activated that we could get in such rapport with our entertainment that we're like, oh, I can totally do that. That there's really out of shape, round, plump ladies are like, I could be Cara Dune, because they're like, look, she's so much bigger than other female humans. I'm like, that woman is probably fuck tons tinier than you think she is, because cameras also that is filled with muscle and decades of martial arts training and ass kickery, and yay for feminism that we now have female humans who are like, I could totally do that with absolute no training, no aptitude. I got it. I'm the next. Totally.
What's the name of the actor who played Pedro Pascal? Right.
Yeah.
In real life, Gina Carano could wipe the fucking floor with Pedro Pascal. And I hear you. I
mean, these were really, really out of shape humans, which is fine. You can be an out of shape human, and you can be empowered to so much by the television. That's part of our let these movies and shows move you into feeling fan fucking tastic. And I just sat back and it's like, so what aspect of your life actually causes you to believe that you could in fact be? I'm very confused, and I didn't attack or ask them about it. I mean, when I'm I declare I can do that, I'm actually have a background in athletics and acting, and I've done stage combat and fighting. Even with
are you now putting your your hat in the ring? You're by the way, Disney, just in case you're listening,
straight up, I would need some time to train. I am aware that. It probably would take me a year with the right nutrition to look like I can do that and get back into the balance and train my body to do those sorts of things again. Because I at least was a collegiate athlete, and I've spent my whole life, I was doing stunt pratfalls for fun.
That's how we got here.
Stunt training. And they have I didn't do martial arts, but I have sword fighting and stage combat training. There's actual, I would be building on muscle memory that's useful.
Anyway. I don't know how I ended up in this conversation twice so recently, but in my other podcast, Morgan and I were talking about a similar concept, and I mentioned that I watched a video from a self-defense teacher who was basically like, he made a very provocative title, and he was like, feminism could get you killed. And he went on to say there are things that women are often told or taught, and particularly modeled in movies, that he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to teach you, like, he's like using your keys and going like, I'm going to like punch the person with my keys. He's like, there are pieces of advice, self-defense techniques that he's like, if you're a 120 pound, 130 pound female and there's a 200-pound male, you need to run.
Yes.
That is what you need to do, because there is nothing you can spray that guy with mace and he is still going to come at you if he wants to come at you. So the self-defense that he talks about, he's like, there are real self-defense principles and strategies that if you learn them, they can keep you safe and protected. And he's like, the problem is bad advice will give you a sense of confidence that you should not. And movies are not helping that.
Oh, you know my favorite shitty movie thing? Have we talked about this? My favorite move is the jump on someone's back from behind move.
Yeah. You're going to do a lot of good doing that.
Why is that an instinct? Why does that keep happening? I know. I'm going to protect you. Grr! Not a move.
No.
Don't do it.
And you know what's funny is it's so close to getting your arm around their neck, which would be better. Yeah. Hey, can I revisit something that popped into my head?
Yeah.
I just realized that I name dropped someone that I knew years ago named Stephen Limbaugh, and was like telling stories about him. And then I also said, I'm kind of like not upset at all that your cousin just died. So if he ever watches this, I don't mean anything personally. And I love you, Stephen, and I hope you're not too broken up or upset. And if you are, my heart goes out to you and your family. And also, I think that Rush Limbaugh really hurt the planet. And that's just my personal opinion.
I think it's sad for him and his loved ones.
Yeah. And I don't hate him.
No.
I don't think he deserved to die. And I think as a cumulative whole, I think that he spewed hate and lies. And he has overall made the world a worse place, I think. And I don't know him. I could be wrong, but that's the impression that I have of him.
Yeah.
So I'm not sad that he's not here anymore. I can also have compassion for those he left behind and his kids and his family, and say that that's very sad. And I'm sure he was also probably loving to some people, and I don't know. It's anyway, I did just notice that I was like, funny story. Also, fuck your cousin and family. That was like, maybe.
I was driving a Lyft for a while there, and I had a passenger. It was a long drive, traffic-y from the airport. I think it was like 65 minutes or so we spent together, and we were talking about, and he was bringing up how interesting it is that we had all of these years with unregulated radio being broadcast to so many humans with just vitriol and lies, just flooding propaganda at people. And I've said that one of the shifts that I think disenfranchised a lot of people, and I don't think a lot of people are super aware of it or call it, but when Oprah decided to start her own network. Now, I don't even know how that happened. I don't know if Oprah decided to start her own network. It seemed like that was the thing. But Oprah deciding to move her show to cable, which is a paywall and an access issue. So Oprah is sitting with almost daily, 5 days a week, she has access to everyone in the country, and she appeals to just a broad demographic of humans. And she shifted her style of talk show from grandiose subjects for an hour to like 10 years of a more positive focus, more positive psychology. And it doesn't mean that she wasn't a giant, like advertiser of products. And it was like, if you turned a lot into advertising, and she was forwarding certain kinds of conversations in society.
Sure.
I think her show had a lot to do with Barack Obama getting elected and a lot of things moving. Like, she was part of a cultural push, and a lot of people related to her, and she did well in the middle of the country. And then once her brand of, like, no one else.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I never thought
Ellen's
about
like
that.
fun, and you're like, oh, I've
Right.
got my gay clown that keeps me happy and entertained. But she doesn't drop into the guts of healing people's trauma, helping people shift towards meditation, helping people want to eat better, talking about, you know, like, and still she's an affiliate marketing person, so she's selling books and she's selling Dr. Oz pills, and she's starting other things. But the core branding around figuring out how to be a better person and dropping, like, that was essential. And when that left, then we had a lot more division. No one else replaced that core of our kind of culture, like countrywide morality.
Well, and that I think you said something really interesting. You were like, she resonated with the middle of the country. And I'm like, oh yeah, my mom was super into Oprah. And now that I think about it, my mom wasn't into any of that other stuff. And Oprah crossed those boundaries in a way where she didn't just appeal to liberal and minority groups. She appealed across that to a lot of the middle of the country, right-leaning, even religious types, but she brought in more loving, more, because she was talking about freaking A Course in Miracles and things like that on her, which is like, that's actually relatively philosophically advanced, and exposing people to ideas about compassion and love and bettering yourself. You're right. Like, I mean, obviously I've always thought of Oprah as like a cultural icon and phenomenon, but you really do point out she crossed something that I don't know of anybody else that I can point to who's done that in that way. And certainly no one replaced her in that way. Nobody that big. There's probably individual small people, but
well, and to have like that broadcast access. This is a similar, like, that was the only thing that could compete with these like radio extremists, because everywhere else where there were different opinions, they were happening on cable, and not everybody had access to cable. So you've got like Jon Stewart and a bunch of other people sort of mocking humans, but there was nobody leading the moral core of our entertainment and holding that broad an audience.
Yeah.
While I say I have no idea if that was her choice to move, maybe there was pressure, and so she's like, well, the only thing I could do is like, I don't know if it was her personal choice to like, I just want my own network and like move it. But she leapt up to a paywall that made her programming and what she had to offer something that was more elite. Only some people could get access to it. You had to pay a premium channel. It wasn't even part of like a normal cable package. It was even beyond that, right? And so it brought a lot of philosophies out of reach for more people. And I think that's part of a shift, a massive shift in no one else. Who else is?
Well, now the internet has again democratized a lot of this, and now I think that I don't know if there will ever be voices as big as some of those voices before. Just like we're never going to have a Michael Jackson again, or even the Beatles, or even Elvis. You're never going to have that. I don't think that voices that big. I mean, like, Joe Rogan is one of the biggest voices on the planet right now, and his reach, while enormous, while it dwarfs anything on regular television, is still only like 17 million or something like that, which is only 17 million. I know. But I'm saying, like, that's not Oprah. Fucking Oprah was everyone.
Yes.
Everyone.
Yes.
Did I just quote that Gary Oldman? Everyone, everyone knew Oprah. Everybody heard her. Even if you didn't like her, you still knew what she was saying. And there are lots and lots of people who don't filter for Rogan at all. So
totally. Yeah. I think that was the last unifying piece of entertainment.
Yeah. Now we're making a smorgasbord, or like it's a salad bar of a little bit of this person, a little bit of this person, and you're making your own plate when it comes to digesting people's viewpoints and things.
And it's really challenging because other generations had, you know, like before Oprah, people were still watching Seinfeld. People were still watching broadcast TV. We hadn't like shifted off. People, you could have the water cooler. We don't have
water
everybody's
cooler
working virtually now. We don't have water coolers unless they.
Well, the internet is that water cooler to a certain extent.
Like a Facebook, here's what happened. You have memes that show up, but it doesn't mean it may not show up in your algorithm, and that if that's not the stuff you've decided to be interested in. But back when you had just a couple few silos of where entertainment was happening, more humans were having similar exposure at the same time.
Well, yeah, and you rewind even further than that. There was a time when there were like 3 channels.
Yes.
And like, think about how easy propaganda would be at that point. Like, you just have a direct line into every family, and more people were buying TVs at that time. Mm-hmm. And even when you think about, like, I believe that, well, I think that people still need to learn a lot more about this. I believe that we have learned more and more how to come out of the trance when we're taking in information. We can call bullshit on things better. I still think most people are not aware of how unfiltered the access is when you're watching things, and especially digesting news, especially scrolling news feeds. Like, we don't have the same kind of bullshit detector there that we do for the news. Like, you've seen the news has been around for decades. So when you see certain things on the news, you're like, oh, I see the point you're making there. But they're getting more clever about bypassing the critical part. But go back to when there was only 3 channels. Mm-hmm. Everybody's just like, like, that makes me think about people then who were like, TV is the like box for idiots, and being like, I bet I could see that at that time. Like, it maybe it's not as much that way now. Of course, I think that's still probably how most people use it. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying, I'm not even talking about TV anymore. I'm talking about the screen is this portal in, and how are you using it? Is it making your life better? Is it growing you? Is it shifting you? Is it expanding you or not? And, you know, we miss Oprah, I think is the point I'm making here.
Yeah. Well, and it's an interesting thing to have the touchstone that used to be kind of pushing culture in a specific direction that you could see.
Yeah.
We can't see all of the different portals pushing people in many different ways. Like, I remember one of the important shifts was after the Vietnam War, they stopped showing bodies coming home because they recognized that that was fueling the protests. Yeah. And they just recognized, like, here was this tool they didn't quite know what was going on.
In World War II, it was all propaganda, which is part of the reason why. Not that I'm careful. Not that I'm saying Nazis weren't monsters for everything that they did. They were. And why is it that Nazi is like the go-to villain in a movie where you don't, they're not human anymore. Like they're, it's like Nazis and zombies. Like, they are at the same level of, we can do anything to them and people will laugh and cheer and whatever. And why? Partly because the programming at that time was, these people are monsters. They are inhuman and we can kill them. And that was propaganda in World War II, because all the media was influenced and controlled from the top down. And then by Vietnam, it started to become like, no, there was freedom of press, and the journalists were getting in there and being like, this is awful. War is hell. war was hell in World War II, but all the propaganda was come and celebrate your heroes. And like we idolize that one as this good war, this righteous war, but it was just as dirty and just as fucked up and just as horrific as Vietnam. It's just we saw the horror in Vietnam, and now all of that stuff is extremely regulated and controlled. Vietnam was the only time we ever got like kind of a real glimpse at it.
Totally. What I find is interesting is that monsterizing. I think people want to create monsters because it makes it sort of simple.
Oh yeah.
And the problem with it is when you delete and you distort and you generalize things to that level where something's a monster, then you forget the human who does the things. We don't learn the lessons, or we can't recognize how that actually happens. If you put such a great distance, and our brains kind of have to do that to keep us from trauma. I keep wondering, like, cool, rape and assault and violence, we could learn about how it works and prevent it and grow different people who behave differently. There's a way that we could appreciate how to help people heal from traumas so they don't perpetuate the loop by hurting new people. But I think that culturally we go into a type of amnesia because our bodies and our brains are trying to protect us from that kind of level of horror. So we just like, ooh, monsters, so scary. Like, no, that's your uncle, that's your neighbor, that's people, they behave in these ways, they've been hurt in these ways. Like we can't heal a thing we're not able to like actually look at. And if we cartoonize it into like, oh, evil villain, there's no best for that.
Yeah, the best lesson that I ever learned on this was the very simple statement: if you were in Nazi Germany in the 1930s, you would statistically have been a Nazi. And that is not a judgment on your character. That is, you think you'd be the exception, but so did everyone then. And you don't understand the mass psychology of how these things go until you can find the potential Nazi or serial killer or whatever inside yourself. This is one of the reasons, as morbid as it is for a lot of people, I have spent a lot of time studying about serial killers and studying journals and real science and interviews that humanize these people, because it helps me to go, oh, we all have that potential in us. And what is it? There, but for the grace of God, go we. Like, the idea is, I am grateful I didn't have the things happen to me that happened to that person, because I understand that not just if I was them, or if I went through what they went through, I would have the same thing. If I was them and I went through what they went through, I would have responded the exact same way. And that is a doorway to a level of compassion that most people struggle to find, is realizing, oh, it's all in me.
Yeah.
I read a book called The Machete Diaries, I believe. And it was about these warlords in Africa after apartheid that may or may not have been responsible for individually killing upwards of 10,000 people, a lot of them with a machete. And the idea was that one of the things that was so fascinating about this interview with these people was that they did not display any of the characteristics of a psychopath.
Right.
That in fact, they believed that what they were doing was right. And psychopaths, they don't have that. Psychopaths are just like, I did it because it was fun, or I enjoyed it. They're not really justifying it, or they're just compelled to do it. There's a lot more. It's a lot more complicated there. They don't have concepts of right and wrong. That's the definition of the psychopath, is that they don't really care about that. They're not doing it because it's wrong. They don't think about right and wrong in the same way that other people do. But these people were devout to the idea that what they did was right. Yes. And they individually killed like tens of thousands of people. like with their bare hands.
Yeah.
And you hear about this and you're just like, I have that in me. That is what happens when you become, when an ideology takes hold of you. That's what you can do when bad ideas get stuck in here and they own you and they control you. Right. And knowing that makes me a lot more compassionate and understanding for other people. Mm-hmm. And also it makes me a lot more careful and cautious and protective of what I let take root in here.
That's fair. Yeah, I annoy a handful of my friends by having the capacity to appreciate that people's circumstances lead them to behaviors that they do. Mm-hmm.
Hurt people. Vast
amounts of humans that I will just not villainize because for better or worse, I've got usefulness out of it. A lot of humans in my family have made just awful choices that were the best that they could do with the circumstances they came from. And in order to survive and be a human that got love and went through the world and, could get to basketball tournaments and shit like that, like sometimes one needs to appreciate and get love from whatever form it comes in. Mm-hmm. I don't always have choices about that. And I don't know. I drive a lot of people crazy because you're like, you should draw a line. People are awful. Those people are evil and gross. And I was like, well, if I were living their circumstances, I'd be making the same exact choices that they are right now.
You and I have both worked very hard to develop that capacity to not dehumanize or villainize other people. Mm-hmm. And personally, I think it makes us better than everyone.
Sorry,
I had to lighten the fucking mood here. Yeah, right? Jesus.
Okay, speaking of a unifying thing that isn't like mass murder.
Okay.
Propaganda.
How's the weather?
I survived. Okay, right now. Timestamp. I survived a power outage wintering. So Portland is hilarious. People try to make fun of Portland because we'll have like a dusting of snow and close a bunch of things down, and then every now and then we'll get like snow for weeks, and then like for like 3 days and the whole thing's closed down for like a week or something. We get teased a lot. We don't have the infrastructure to handle snow, and I'm putting snows in quotes that if you're watching the video you can see, and I'm telling you about if you're just listening, because Portland doesn't get snow. We get ice rain, and then if we do get snow, it sort of melts in the day and freezes. We get a lot of freeze rain, and we get temperatures will rise enough to melt things that will then freeze overnight. And then we just have ice. We have a layer of ice that's covered with some snow and then melts into sloshy iceness. And so you get Midwesterners and other people like, ha ha ha, I can drive. No, you can't. You can't actually. So people abandon their cars on the freeways. So we had that happen. But then, oh boy, Pacific Northwest, we just love our trees, even if they're half dead. So we had ice on trees, breaking trees, and then melting things and crashing. And a friend of mine, she parked up at the top of the hill so that she could get out. And she swears she looked to make sure there weren't trees around, and there weren't. But this massive tree that was far enough away broke and smashed the top of her car.
Oh my God.
Because
the freezing rain gets on the trees and weighs down the branches, and they will split in half. They'll like part of it will fall off. The whole tree will fall over sometimes. Plus then people crash into the trees.
They crash into the trees. They crash into light poles because it's ice. It's ice out there. And this only happens every 3 years or so. We don't get it enough. So trees are like, I'm so free to just grow. I just want to grow this branch for decoration. It's not useful. I've got so much freedom. I don't need it for sunlight. This is my decorative
just my branch. Pretty branch.
And so those all fall into power lines. So we had a lot of power outages, and I had spent last week building this workshop. I'm giving a 6-hour workshop. I was supposed to give a 6-hour workshop on Monday about communication. So I'm like diligently like working on the computers and like getting this thing done. And a couple of the participants, I'm teaching 10 people. two of them had their power out. And I was like, that popped in my head Saturday. I'm like, well, given that this is a special presentation, if we have a few more people with power out, then maybe we should reschedule, whatever. But I'm like, focus, get it done. So I get the thing done. I am super ready. Like around 8 o'clock on Sunday, I'm like, cool, I got this. I'm ready for tomorrow. Yeah. So I shut everything down. I think maybe power's going out. I start to charge my phone, my other stuff. And an hour later, my power goes out. And I didn't get to fully charge my phone because I was focused. It was at 50%. So I'm like texting the organizer and I was like, Sue, my power went out. I'll check in the morning. Because in the past, power for me, I would usually have a power out in the middle of the night and then I would be back in the morning. So I'm like, cool. I'm just still going to pretend that it'll be on. I'll wake up at 6. I'm supposed to teach at 9. Cool. And she had said, if, just check in around 7:30. So it's 6. Power's still out. I barely have phone. I'm like, I could probably sneak in maybe an hour or so more of sleep. And then just like, I'll just have a shake for breakfast and like shorten my getting ready time. 7:30 was just out. So I'm like, I canceled the thing. We're rescheduling it at some point. And then I go back to sleep. Also, it's cold, by the way, really fucking cold. Because it's still, I think it's starting to melt. So it's like 40 outside and 57 on the inside of my house. And I have a bunch of blankets. And I'm like, I'm just going to stay in here for as long as I can.
I know what you mean. I had to wear a coat yesterday. It was okay today, though. I didn't need a coat. But yesterday, I was like, it was chilly out.
Because it was like 65.
Yeah. At one point, I had to take the coat off because it was getting too warm. So,
yeah,
but I get you. I feel you. Like, I understand what the country's going through right now.
Yeah, my power outage lasted 44 hours. And
oh my, what? Did you just say 44 hours?
44 hours. My dad's lasted 41 hours.
What in the actual fuck? I've never had the power out that long. I didn't realize that's what this was building up to. I was like, it went out and then I couldn't do the thing. 44 hours. That's like, holy shit.
Hours, yeah. I turned on my phone long enough to be like, how long will food in my freezer, food in my fridge last? So I had 2 full freezers. If they're full, they last 48 hours. If you don't open the doors, everything after 4 hours in your refrigerator is done. My roommate and I kept going to our cars to charge our phones, and it was happening really slowly. At some point at the end of day 1, my neighbors got a generator, and a friend of mine offered for me to like go be warm at her place, but I couldn't get there because
also it's fucking COVID, so that makes all of this so much more complicated.
Yeah. So the snow melted enough that I could sort of scrape a pathway. I was just cold, and I'm like, I'm gonna go scrape and shovel ice and snow off of this area just to move around. And then I got so sweaty I had to change my clothes. I'm like, well, do I have a more
I guess that worked.
warm layers? Yeah, it did work. Also masturbating at some point helped if you're ever
get yourself warmed up.
Yep. Move around.
It's building a fire.
Internal kindling. So the first night I got enough blankets that I could be warm, and my friend who'd offered her house, and I kept like turning my phone off because I'd get to like charge to 70% and I'd like send 2 texts and it's like 57. I'm like, what? Then my phone kept going down really, really fast, and I kept trying to check in on PGE's like update about when we might have power. And at some point, they said day 2 it'll be on at like 3:45. I'm like, cool. And then they're like, oops, we have no idea when it'll be on. But that night, the first night, my friend brings by a propane or a butane stove thing, which is cool. And then we could like heat tea and other stuff. And I just didn't. The second day, I kind of made it knowing that I'm like, okay, the snow has melted enough that I think I could drive my car to my friend's house. I don't know what her neighborhood is like because the main streets are good. Neighborhoods are dicey because there's slosh and still packs of snow. As I'm driving through the streets that plowed plowed in a bunch of the street parking people who live in like condos and stuff. Their cars are now stuck between like the mounds of snow that the snowplows pushed
This
against
is
their
what you mean by
cars.
the Pacific Northwest doesn't really know how to handle like the snow like
No,
the East Coast does.
no,
Yeah.
we only have like 10-ish trucks in Portland
Yeah.
that can be converted to plows. We didn't until a few years ago allow salt to melt
Right.
ice because of environmental things. It's bad
Right.
for the fish. And since like trees can just grow so freely, they break really easily because they're not having yearly pounding to
Yeah.
teach them to like, oh, don't grow a branch unless it's going to be useful. And also we have all these rules that like we love our trees, so if they're half dead, we don't know, no one's testing them to find out, and nobody's like, oh, just grow monstrous trees in the same strips of your
For
power
the
lines are.
power outage to be 44 hours, whatever took it out must have been a big deal. It must have been hard to get to, or it might have been multiple
It's
things. But
multiple.
like when it takes that long, I'm like, God, that is I've never, even living in the Pacific Northwest, we never had our power out for that long.
Yeah, so multiple trees all over the place. There were at least 6 substations that were broken and down for reasons. I have no
Unbelievable.
idea at this point, like how many grocery stores had generators, because most of the city was out. Not just this city, the
Yeah.
surrounding cities also were out of
Yeah.
power. And people are still without power. Around hour 41, hour 40 or 41, I did go to my friend's house, and my roommate found another place. So I got my mask on. I get there, I bring in she saved my bacon, but literally I just ordered some bacon from Tender Belly, and I stuck it in a freezer, and I grabbed some ground beef, and so my bacon is in her freezer right now because I didn't
All
know
right.
if it was gonna last. I'm like,
Well, priorities.
exactly, right? Meat. Very important. High level of importance for me.
Yeah.
So I get to the house, got my mask on, all of my shit's safe, and I because of my friend whose car got toppled by a tree, there was one side of the road that I knew I could get out, but there was a giant tree if I parked there on street parking. So I did a U-E and I parked on the other side with no tree, but there was like still snow, and I sort of like spin my wheel into place and then plop, and I was like, well, yeah, I don't know if I can get out of here, but that's for later, Adrianne, to figure
Yeah.
out. And my first move, the moment that all of the things had been figured out and taken care of, and I'd been freezing and only drinking like shakes and almonds, I was eating these like protein cookies and drinking like keto shakes and almonds because I didn't want to open the freezers. Uh, and the food that I could have cooked, other than having a hot tea, it was in the refrigerator and it had been done. Like I tried to get snow and stick it in there, and anyway, I just collapse. I just like just get down to the floor and do my corpse pose. Not with the intention of like, hey, I'm just gonna. There was no thought process to how
Yeah.
about you just corpse pose and ground. It was just like kerplop
Yep.
and thud, and I just
Like a different kind of pratfall.
right. I stayed in a kind of like couldn't keep my eyes open state for some hours, and finally we got notification that power was back on, and I did some breathing so that we could
Yeah.
do our show today, but I am so exhausted, and it's
Being
not the first time this year.
yeah.
This is like time 4.
Being in a stress level like that is like running on the red line. And when you get to a point where you start to feel safe, it all catches up with you. So yeah.
And it's so quiet. It is so quiet. Here's how quiet my fear strategy is in this body. I'm kind of grateful. I was laying under 5 blankets with 3 layers of clothing plus scarf plus gloves in my bed with candles. And I was like, oh, candles are really pretty. This is kind of nice. Oh, I had a hood on. I should do I used to do nightly like candles and stretching. And it was, I don't know, 5 or 6 when I started laying down, and I scanned my entire life. I could not, like, my fingers were too cold for like guitar playing or like writing or reading anything. I just laid there under all of the blankets that I own, propped up with the pillows, and just, I got lucky because I ended up having the kinds of daydreams where I just felt really, really grateful for all of the like relationships that I'd had and the people that I loved and the things that I learned. But I scanned everything. It's like the slowest life going before your eyes. And somewhere around 8, I decided to sleep. No, I decided to masturbate and then try to sleep. And then my friend brought a thing. But like, boy, it felt like a super fun ritual. And I was too tired to purposefully do some sort of release process. Or I thought of it.
I think that counts. I think that counts. I think you were already in an elevated enough state just thinking about all that stuff, released stuff.
Yeah. I remembered some core beautiful things that I like about me that may not be, like, just loving people and wanting, like, knowing that I love them, and really, like, I want to tell more people that I love them and express myself more truthfully. I think that would be great. I kind of remember that, Adrianne. She was fun. Like, if you scan your whole life slowly in the cold, with nothing else to do, and your cat's just like, why? This week, the cat kept wandering around. Why? It's cold. What? Why is no one doing the things? It's cold, and you're just, what? In one place? Why? And I think my cat might have been doing my fear for me, because I was just, what's the next thing? I think I'll have a shower. Oh, good. I get to try out my shower cap that doesn't do humidity on the inside. That's exciting. That's not the sound of somebody who's panicked.
No, but the collapse is the indication that
right.
in the face of all that. I mean, I had those moments when I was dealing with cancer too,
Yeah.
where on the surface and pretty far down, I was like, this is all good. And truly leading up to the surgery and even in the recovery from the surgery, I did feel that way. I didn't have any of those moments. It was really good. It was in the radiation. It was like when the radiation started, that was hard. And I was like, I think I found myself being like, this is everything else here, I've been really positive and this has been really great. And then 2 weeks, 3 weeks into the 8 weeks that I had to do that, all of a sudden I am exhausted and I feel miserable. And 5 days a week, I have to go get in the car and drive 20 minutes to be tortured and then drive 20 minutes back. And then just being like, oh, this is hard. And then I had some mental and emotional breakdowns. But breakdown, breakthrough, what's the difference?
Yeah, it's happening to everyone. I wonder, though, if other people now have a different level of appreciation for candles. I have a different level of appreciation for the generosity of other humans showing up. Especially given that I am I have been a very individual, take care of my own shit. Like, I'm a competent human, and sometimes I do need help. And I've laughed at myself about how people don't offer me help, because I always have mostly seemed like I had my shit together and could, like, I remember my favorite story of this is this person who was moving into my house needed me to clear out the garage so they can store some stuff in there, and they were cleaning out another garage, and I'm like, it's full of junk and stuff. And he's like, well, I'll let you use my truck that I'm using to move in and move out of this other house. I'll take it to the dump, no big deal. So he said he was going to get up and help me move stuff out of the garage, and he wasn't waking up. He wasn't answering his phone. The truck was there, and so at 8 a.m, and I'd had a late night running at theater. Like, I'd been working till like 11 or something, and I can't wind down, so I'd been up till 12 or 1. So I'm 8 a.m, I'm just loading out 40-foot long carpet things over my own shoulder up a ramp into a truck somewhere on load 4 of heavy, ridiculous monster things, I'm like, I think this might be why people don't offer to help me. Part 1, I might not be great at asking for help. And part 2, I'm the chick that just is suddenly like 20 and 40 foot long carpet is just getting like shit's getting done. So to have had people show up and offer me help and then be able to accept it is this new wonderful thing.
That's a beautiful moment of realization. I love that story. It leads to that, like, huh.
So, I did, like, I'm wearing a mask because I'm allergic to the mold that's on the carpet. I'm covered. My arms are covered because I don't want to be scratched by something. Like, there's a level of sensitivity and ridiculousness for me doing this. But yeah, mid ramp.
Yeah.
On my 5th giant load of shit.
Well, holy shit, I'm glad you survived. And given that you're exhausted, I will say get some rest, friends. Like I'm pretty tired too, but I didn't go through that. So
right. Yeah,
I do have to wrap up though, because I gotta get headed on to next things. But I'm glad we got a chance to catch up, and you got a chance to catch me up. And I do find it funny that we ended up in this show not only talking about the weather, also talking about how we all have a Nazi inside of us, and we all have the capacity for evil, and that recognizing that hurt people can give you a much deeper sense of compassion, and also fuck Rush Limbaugh.
Exactly. And while you TV deeply, how about turn on some candles and make it a deeper, more fun ritual? It's prettier.
Love it. All right, I'm done. Right. That was fun.
Nicholas,
sometimes I'm glad no one watches this show.
Oh gosh, there's at least 7.
I know. Actually, we had like 3 people watching the whole time. But
I love it. Thanks.
All right.
We'll see you.